And then we get into, probably my favorite fight on the card from a comedy perspective. I will never say that I dislike or anything like that about a fighter, but there's something about Greg Hardy's attitude and the way he approaches, just certain things in general. I'm a big NFL fan, and so I've seen how his NFL career and the things that came out of that unfolded. And he seems very happy with being in the UFC, and that's fair. But it's like, I just think that when we watched that Marcin Tybura fight, we learned a lot about the big guys who just throw big bombs that Uncle Dana and the UFC just want to see do well because they bring in the big bucks with those finishes. I mean, he was 100% on the verge of fighting a technical fighter who would be able to end him just based on those reasons. I have talked about this fight so much, but the Yorgan de Castro and Greg Hardy fight to this day might be my least favorite fight of all time. And this includes a lot of the Damian Maias and Anderson Silva fights, even your Woodleys and Wonder Boys. I really thought that fight was just so hard to watch. And ironically enough, the Maurice Green fights in the UFC seem to go the same way. And that was actually Greg Hardy's last win. It was a finish in the second round. I thought that he did a good job of trying to work his power shots into there. Wasn't getting many chances in the first round, but really started to open up in the second, and it paid off big. But here we go. We talk about a guy like Tai Tuivasa, right? I think that there was a span there where he just took on such good veterans and was not taking the career seriously enough. You talk about his first loss to Junior Dos Santos, then Ivanov, and then Sergey Spivak, who I have been preaching is probably one of the bigger contenders on his way up right now that nobody's talking about. But then you go from there to the Stefan Struve and Harry Hunsucker fight, both first round finishes. Now working sometimes at AKA with the big boys. We're seeing Tai Tuivasa take his UFC career a lot more seriously, and it's paying dividends. He spoke about how after that, Spivak fight in 2019, he was very much trying to get things serious. And the best part is you can see it in him. The body looks so much better. Think back or go look at pictures of Tai Tuivasa when he was younger in the UFC. I mean, he looks younger now. That's pretty much where I'm going to leave it off. But where does Tai Tuivasa need to be careful? That boxing range, right? The problem with power is it can drop anybody at the wrong time. And if it hits the right spots, it's party done. We've never seen a Tai Tuivasa loss that bad outside of, the Junior Dos Santos second round knockout. So for me, it's one of those areas where he's definitely not going to get submitted. And I think he actually has an option here of trying to take this fight to the ground. I think that Tybura really opened up the concept of what it takes to take some of these bigger strikers in the heavyweight division down, because everybody just wants to watch these stand and bang fights. But especially in the heavyweight division, if you're athletic enough and you have a good enough pedigree in some of the groundwork, wrestling, grappling, clinch work, that's where you want to take the fight against some of these, newer fighters that pretty much are coming in as, great boxers or great stand-up fighters. I just see Tai Tuivasa being a better MMA fighter and just the better MMA athlete. Without question, Greg Hardy is the better athlete here. There is literally no doubt at all about that. But can he deal with a guy like Tai Tuivasa pushing forward with that pace? Probably one of the more powerful guys he's going to fight as well. Those are the areas where I see this being a very troublesome fight for Greg Hardy, because I think Tai Tuivasa brings a lot more now to the table than he might have in the past. And, Andrei Arlovsky, Rashad Coulter, Cyril Asker, that is what propelled him into the fights with some of the biggest, names and prospects in the UFC with Spivak, Ivanov, and Junior Dos Santos. And then it's back to reset with the Struve and the Hunsucker fight. So for me, I just want to see Tai really show off what he can do in all areas of MMA, because I don't think there's a perfect fight. There isn't a more perfect fight for him to do that, because if this is a boxing fight, I really think it's anyone's game. And Greg Hardy is just such a good athlete. And I think that if his combos are starting to get better and his ability to feint, his ability to maybe even, fake of the changing levels, stuff like that, just to get guys moving in the wrong places and make them erratic. That's what Greg Hardy needs, because if he keeps looking for those same shots against better athletes and better MMA fighters that he was doing against the Mo Greens and some of the older fighters that he's already fought, it's just not going to work out. That's the part where Tybura really exploited him in a big way. And if Tai Tuivasa has that wrestling pedigree, some of those takedowns, I think this is a fight to really consider that. You look at some of the stats, right? Takedown defense for Greg Hardy is still 80%. So Marcin Tybura was doing a lot of work there. That's the football background, man. These guys are used to not wanting to go to the ground. Their center of gravity is phenomenal. That's where I'm trying to see how much Tai Tuivasa really brings to the table, because when you think about it, both of these guys are just so close in terms of stats, just about 4 to 5 strikes landed, just about 3 to 4 strikes eaten. It's just such a close fight in a stand-up war, and it's just, I don't know if I'm making it so obvious that I love Tai Tuivasa, and I guess I have a bone to pick with Greg Hardy in terms of just how he conducts himself and how he says things, but he's becoming a lot better in terms of behavior. He's becoming, a relative fan favorite in some ways because of how exciting he can be as a fighter in terms of potential. So this is a tough one to call. I do think that with Greg Hardy being the better athlete, with the length in his favor, finding those power shots are going to be so key and could very much end the fight for him in a big way. But on the flip side, Tai Tuivasa has shown to have a good chin, but the big problem for him was discipline and being able to, go 3 rounds athletically, being able to find the right spots to be able to find his success, right? I think that's where he's always struggled. He starts to fight somebody else's fight, and then it just goes south. It happened in the Dos Anjos fight. It happened in the Spivak fight. And this is one where he's at least getting that opportunity to be like, well, I don't think this guy's going to take me to the ground so much. Maybe I can even let my hands go and then work my way to the ground, because I kind of have seen a pretty good game plan done against Greg Hardy. So I think that there's very clear areas for both these guys to win. This is a wide open fight, in my opinion. And when that's the case, it usually can be closer to a pick'em. So in that case, I do want to take away all bias and give this fight a pick'em, because I do think that from a power perspective, an athletic perspective, Greg Hardy can certainly finish this fight. But if it goes 3 rounds and it does hit all those different areas of MMA, it's going to be interesting to see just how good Greg Hardy has gotten since the Marcin Tybura fight. So without further ado, let's take a look at the lines. Good God. All right. So this kind of plays very well into how I went into the conversation, right? Tai Tuivasa, -170 favorite opener, now getting closer to that -130, -140 range. Greg Hardy opened as a +145, and now he's actually in between that +105 and +115 range. So if you are a big Greg Hardy fan and you hopped on that +145, congrats to you, because that's a huge win if he pulls that off. But on the flip side, going back to what I was saying, the reason why I see this as a pick'em is just those areas where it's just so wide open, and frankly, those lines are getting very close. People must have pounded Greg Hardy that +145, which is bringing it back down. I mean, Tai Tuivasa moving from that -170 to the -135. If this trend continues, this very well could be a pick'em in 2 days. But weigh-ins are going to speak volumes about a fight like this. Both guys have to, show up pretty well come tomorrow. So I'm excited to see where both guys land on the scale. And I think that's going to very much dictate where we go with the picks, stuff like that. Obviously, if you follow me close enough, Instagram has been acting up a little bit. We put the previous pick'em in the story. We'll probably do the same thing if we can't get the posts going again. But outside of that, I think that it's going to be a really, really fun fight. Probably the most exciting one for some of the mainstream casual fans, as they like to be called, or not so much like to be called. But